Hey, good morning, everybody. Day two of Roaring 20s Great Depression. Have a few interesting topics to discuss today. First up is the concept of standard of living. Now, this can be defined in many, many different ways. I guess the way that I would define it is what are you able to buy? Where are you able to live? What assets are you able to own? All of that goes into your standard of living. It's really predicated, I would say, the two biggest things is what is your income and where does that allow you to live? Okay. What does it allow you to buy? Can you go on vacation? Can you afford? What kind of clothes can you afford? What kind of cars can you afford? All of that. What kind of vacations can you go on? What kind of concerts can you go to? What kind of schools can you afford to pay for? All of that would go into standard of living. Now we are going to see a drastic change in the standard of living and expectations, if you will, of many Americans during the 1920s. And a lot of this is going to be built on something called credit culture. Now, I'm assuming that all of you know what a credit card is. You may have used them. You may have some in your name that your parents pay for you. You may be opening some up when you first go to college. Typically, the things that we buy on credit or historically were houses and cars. Now I can tell you, I put just about every single thing on my credit card, and nobody really carries around cash anymore. We can swipe with our phones and our cards and our chips, and it's very, very simple and seamless and, you know, quicker. It's more efficient to use a credit card today than it is to use cash. Now, that there's good and there's bad. So ease of efficiency in economic transactions is good because it speeds up the transaction rate and companies can sell more products, people can buy more things are easier to transact. The bad thing is think about psychologically. What hurts more? Handing over paper money where you look at the money, your brain interprets it as something that is valuable, something that is scarce in the sense of no one has limitless amounts of money. The more you take those bills out of your hand and put it into the hands of somebody else, the less money you have to buy other things. There's a psychological ramification to that to perhaps keep people more in check with their spending. Now, when you remove that psychological connection and you hand over a credit card, that can change things because what is the credit card's value? What is it actually worth? You hand it over, they hand it back, you get what you want, you sign for it, and you walk away. Do you realize how much you just spent? Do you realize that you have to pay that money back at the end of the month? Do you realize that if you don't, there are sometimes exorbitant interest rates attached to the money that you can't pay back at the end of the year, or excuse me, at the end of the month? Now, society is really going to transition from a pay as you go society to a buy what you want when you want it society. Now, compared to the 1920s to today, and they were still much more pay as you go than they were buy it when you want compared to today. But the pathway to getting to where we are today, I think we would have to say originates in the 1920s. And banks are going to realize this and they are going to extend credit lines for installment buying of appliances, for installment buying on cars and houses, and kind of anything people wanted to buy as an I will owe you this later. Now, credit is wonderful when things are going well and the economy is doing very well because if we're making money in the stock market and if our wages are going up and if our house values are going up, then all of this is good because the idea is that we can spend a little bit more, pay for it at the end of the month, and we'll be fine. The problem is that you're buying things based on debt. And when you have things, if you go from a life where you didn't have much to a life where you start to acquire things, you look around, you now own a house, you now own a car. Your wife wants a vacuum cleaner, you buy it for her. Your kids want, I don't know, this toy or that toy, you buy it for them. They're smiling, they're happy, you feel successful. Things are getting better. This is the American dream. But if you lose your job, or if your house goes down in value, the bank doesn't want to hear that you can't pay them back the credit line that they extended to you. Now, I'll just give you a brief example from my situation. You all know I'm a Catholic school educator and a real estate agent. My wife is a speech pathologist. We do pretty well. We live comfortably. Now, my American Express card, okay, gives me a $30,000 limit per month. And listen, the American Express black cards are limitless. You could go and spend $10 million dollars on one of those cards, regardless of whether you can pay it back or not. Now, $30,000 a month, I could go out right now and buy a car on my American Express card for $30,000, regardless of whether I could pay that money back at the end of the month. Now, if I can't pay them back at the end of the month, they are going to charge me a 15 to 20% interest rate on that debt. Now, just to put it into perspective, the interest rate on my mortgage is about 3.5%. The interest rates on my cars are both less than 3%, but a credit card company will charge you 15 to 20%. Now, I didn't ask them for $30,000 of credit limit. They probably started me with 10, and as I paid back my monthly bill every month, they kept increasing it. Not because I asked, but and I don't want to totally, be mean to the credit card companies, but they make money not when you pay your bill in full. They make money when you cannot pay your bill in full. So they're going to keep raising that limit in order to see if they can entice you to spend more and more and more. And there are many Americans today that are in that kind of trouble. Credit card debt is very, very difficult to get out from under. Now, this starts all kinds of ethical questions. Is a credit card with a limit of an amount of money that you could not pay back based on your own salary, is that a harmful product in the way that a bad piece of produce or a bad beauty product is? If that harms you, should the government do something about it? Or is it, hey, you should have known better not to spend that money. You should have been more disciplined and not be able to spend that money. I mean, you can buy anything on credit. iPhones now are being bought on credit because now you're paying for the entire price of the phone. The last mattress that I bought was bought at 0% interest for 4 years. So a $4,000 mattress got paid off $100 a month for a couple of years until it was paid back. So it didn't cost me anything in interest to be able to spread out my payments over 4 years. But Sleepy's got a mattress sale. Okay? So this is a growing trend starting from the 1920s all the way till today. Now, the limits of prosperity. So where is this growth going? We talked about the Gilded Age. Gilded Age, you still had 60-70% of America being in the working class, meaning that they would work all week in terrible conditions oftentimes, lots and lots of hours, 50, 60, 70 hours, no unemployment insurance, no disability, and they would still remain poor. Now, things are going to get better. World War I helped push labor wages up. Unions got stronger. You see here on this slide, wages rose by 25%, but corporate profits by 50%. Okay? Now, corporations can pay more wages if they make more money, yes. But we do see a little bit of an uneven growth there. Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler dominated the auto industry at 80%. 1% of the nation's banks controlled 50% of all of the money. So yes, life is getting better for lots of more people, which is wonderful, but there are still some concentrations of wealth in our social class system and in our industry system or corporation. Beginning in 1929, wealthiest 5% had more money than the bottom 60%. 40% remained in poverty and were unable to participate in this new economy. So the numbers are getting better. 60 and 70% in the 1880s is now 40% in poverty and working class conditions by the 1920s. So there are more professional industries to go into and jobs, accountants, lawyers, doctors, clerks. There is going to be more opportunity, more people going to college, okay? But the question is it organic growth that is coming from hard work and upward trajectory of wages, or is it coming in part through let's say, a sprinkling of credit out there into the economy? See, giving everybody $10,000 to spend does not mean they have $10,000 to spend. But will some people go and spend it? Yes, the economy will improve, wages will improve, But what is it based on? It's based on faulty money or the idea that they'll pay it back over time. So we just have to keep this into perspective. Now we're going to have problems for farmers during World War One, and this is well before we start seeing the warning signs of the Great Depression. But farmers are going to start to struggle in the 1920s. Now, World War One, they had to grow more and more food to feed people during the war effort. People are worried about supply lines, feeding the troops, feeding their families. How are you going to win a war if you don't have food? So farmers are going to really, really tear up uh the process. They're really going to get food produced and out there. And they have to feed Europe as well. We have allies over there, and crops and livestock are destroyed. Life is disrupted. So they need food. And many people starved to death in Europe during World War One. So America is going to be a big seller of produce and livestock and agricultural products to the rest of the world. Now, after this, okay, farm incomes are going to drop because there's going to be a big oversupply and overproduction of crops. So you grew all this food for the war, but then the war ended. Now you have all this food, and what are you going to do to sell your excess supply? You're going to drop your prices. And if people don't buy it, you're going to drop your prices further and further and further. For the first time in the nation's history, the number of farmers are going to decline, and people are going to give up on farming. And they're going to move into cities where there seems to be a lot more economic opportunity. So if we want to talk about the warning signs of the Great Depression, farmers is going to be, agriculture, that sector, is going to be the first where we start to see the warning signs coming. I'm gonna save women's freedom and the flappers for Monday. Let's take it easy for today. I will end this audio lecture. Definitely try to have a good time this weekend. Spend time with family and friends. It's an important time to do that. Raise people's morale. Talk to people. I know that we can't really see each other, but there's never been more in the way of connectivity in terms of social media and Zoom and Google Meets. There's plenty of ways to connect with each other and stay in front of each other and engage. It's really what's going to help us get through this very, very difficult time. I hope you're all doing well. Reach out to me with any questions, and take care of yourselves and your families. Thank you.